Hey all, patch 29.2.2 drops today. And as always, we're going to jump into everything Hearthstone Battlegrounds. That is their jam, that is what we live, that is the hill I'm going to die on. Let us look at the many changes. This is a massive balance patch with a lot of changes, some of them very impactful, some of them kind of seem not impactful enough. I've just glanced over it. Let's dig into it and see all the big differences. Right off the bat, let us start with hero changes. We have Guff Rune Totem, 2 gold. It used to be give a friendly minion of each tier +2. New, 1 gold, give a friendly minion of each tier +2/+1. Now, the dev comment is this is going from 20 armor to 10 armor also with this change. Well, it is a reduction of the hero power cost by half, and you're still getting 75% of that stat bonus you used to get. So that's probably a good number to put the armor at 10, because 1 gold is not much for that amount of tempo you're going to be getting. You have to be running a weird, not menagerie, but pseudo tier, like minion from each tier to make this thing work, but decent bit of stat buffs, and you can cobble together a weird little board and make this thing work. It is an interesting setup, and I do think it'll be fun to see if it plays out. I definitely think more people will be interested to play Guff now. Will it work or not? I think with this iteration at 10 armor, it will hold up pretty damn well, and I'm interested to get a few games with it and try it out. Now, the following cards have been removed, and that is Uninvited Guest, Thorncaller, and Sacred Gift. I liked the idea behind Uninvited Guest. I only got to use it a couple times, but I thought it was fun. Thorncaller, I think I liked its original form better, where it was a battle cry gave you a blood gem and a death rattle get a blood gem. But I still liked this form. I liked it at tier 2, but they're just making room for other cards for it. In Sacred Gift, the problem, I don't think, was buying it. It was the simple fact that you could generate it. I think they just needed to make it so you couldn't generate this one and you had to spend the gold on it to make it okay. But I guess if someone's high rolling and they're generating so much gold they don't care, the gold would be irrelevant and the ability would still just be too strong, making them high roll even more. So I understand the idea behind it. I just really liked this spell, is why I don't want to see it gone. And we've got some cards coming back, and some of them were pretty controversial when they're here, but let's take a look. We've got Hummingbird, Prophet of the Boar, Scarlet Skull, I'd forgotten the name of that one, Sister Death Whisper, and Cloning Conch. Cloning Conch was a big deal because it really enabled some Murloc shenanigans, but there's a lot of changes to some of the Murlocs and how we're generating Murlocs. We're going to jump into that later, so you'll see where that might make this not as effective as it once was, but still be a useful spell if you're playing Murlocs. Now let's look at the minion changes. We've got some big ones here. Rylak Metalhead used to be a tier 4, 3/4 taunt, death rattle, trigger the battle cries of adjacent minions. It is now a tier 4, 5/3 taunt, death rattle, trigger the battle cry of the minion to the left of this. So they've nerfed its effectiveness by half. It's not going to be nearly as good as it was, but it's still going to be really good, because oftentimes I wasn't able to get benefits from both sides of it because, just didn't have room for it, or you'd lose so much tempo. But that being said, the people who were really high rolling with this were using both sides and going completely bonkers. So this is a really good change to at least, snip those people in the butt a little bit. But we'll see overall if it makes a huge difference. Gold Shell Warden used to be a 3/4 Battlecry, give your beast +1/+4, is now a 2/4 Battlecry, give your other beasts 2/4. I mean, I don't really care about the stats on this too much. It's baseline because the Battlecry is actually not bad. 2/4 is a good bit of tempo. 1/4 wasn't great. 2/4 is not an insane difference, but it's leaning closer to a direction now where I'm willing to say, oh, okay, I could cycle through one of these. It doesn't feel too bad. It's still not really great. It's still not what I want to do playing beasts, but I can definitely see worlds and times where I'll be tempted by it now, at least as before. Well, it's not much different from before. I'm not going to be that tempted, but at least I'll be tempted. Iridescent Skyblazer got hit with a pretty good nerf. Used to be a tier 4 2/5. It is now a tier 5 3/8 with the same abilities of when beast takes damage, it buffs other beasts permanently. But that removing it to tier 5 from 4 is a big deal because that means we're going to see less of them, and it's going to take longer for people to get a hold of these. And really, if you don't get this super early anyways, it really does feel like it's kind of slow. So I'm not sure if on tier 5 how much value it's actually going to have, but I could be wrong. Maybe people are going to get them super fast and it won't matter at all. Just doesn't feel as impactful anymore to me. Trigor the Lasher, on the other hand, went from being a tier 5 6/2 whenever another friendly beast takes damage, gain +2 health permanently, to a tier 4 8/3 whenever another friendly beast takes damage, gain +1 health permanently. It used to be tier 5, now it's a tier 4. It doesn't get quite as much health, but you're going to get it early, so theoretically it can catch up to that health. It'll never be what it once was for a ceiling for health, but it's still going to be good. It has more attack. We're getting it earlier. Maybe there's more ways we could buff it. It'd be interesting to see how Trigor plays out. I know a lot of times I was having a full beast board and I just never found the Trigor, and it really felt like I was missing the capstone. So this being at 4 will feel a lot better. Mechanized Gift Horse is exactly the same stats and ability wise, but it went from tier 5 to being now tier 4. So we're going to see a lot more of these in beast and mech lobbies. Spiked Savior went from being a 12/4 taunt, death rattle, deal 1 damage to your minions and give them +1 health, to an 8/2 taunt, reborn, death rattle, give your minions +1 health and deal 1 damage to them. It's not a huge difference, but that reborn part is a really, really big difference. The stat reduction isn't really a problem with this thing because you're not taking it for it to survive. You want it to die, so less health is better in this scenario. So I'm pretty happy with Spiked Savior. We'll see how it works out. If you like this card, you're going to like it more. Octosauri Rap God got a bit of a buff, and it's kind of impressive considering when you first hit it, that's when it's at its weakest. It is now significantly better. It used to be a 5/6 death rattle summon, a 2/2 tentacle, getting +2/+2 after you summon a minion in combat, to now being an 8/8 base. Death rattle summon an 8/8 tentacle, it gains +2/+2 permanently after you summon a minion in combat. That is a big deal. That fact that you don't start at a 2/2 really makes tripling into this early feel really good. You're getting an 8/8 that summons an 8/8 as opposed to a 5/6 that summons a 2/2, which feels not nearly as good. So big buff to Octosauri Rap God. In Goldrin, I'm living in a world where they're buffing Goldrin, folks. It's insanity, but used to be a 3/3 death rattle for the rest of this combat. Your beasts have +3/+3. Now is a 4/4 death rattle for the rest of this combat. Your beasts have +4/+4. I don't understand the synergy with them having to have the same stats to give that buff, but that's the world we live in. It has been a theme often that has been applied to Battlegrounds. I don't like him as a 4/4 because he's less likely to die. Typically, he still will late in the game, of course, when you're getting him, but there's that time where he doesn't, and it costs you the game, and it's very annoying. So I like him to have as little health as possible. That being said, the 4/4 is a decent increase to his buff. Let's see if we start seeing some Goldrin games come back. Fiery Fellblood got hit, and it surely is a nerf. Went from being a 4/3 death rattle, minions in the tavern have +3 attack this game, to a 3/2 death rattle, minions in the tavern have +2 attack this game. It's still good. I still want it. Just don't want it as quite as much, but just a little bit as much. I still want it though. Still think this is good. Just now it feels like it's a hair better, I guess. The 4/3 seemed like it was too good a stat line to give that 3 attack buff permanently. 3/2 still feels pretty good. Yeah, we'll see. I still think this is going to be pretty common card. Backstage Security, that demon you don't really want, that's in tier 1. Well, you want it and you don't want it at the same time, probably just as much. It goes from being a 4/4 to a 4/5. Still don't want a card that's going to be on my board for like 4 to 6 turns. It's going to do 1 damage a turn to me. It is a 4/5. That shop's bad enough, and you don't want to go 3-on-3 with, say, a Sunbacon Relaxer. Not bad. Wrathweaver, because it was way too powerful, needed to be nerfed. After all this time, we looked at Wrathweaver and we said, you are the problem in Battlegrounds. You gotta go. Wrathweaver went from being a 1/4 to a 1/3. That's it. That's the change. It makes a difference on turn 1 and 2. I just don't really see the need for it, but I'm sure their data indicated for some reason I am not aware of that it needed to be changed. It feels like a needless change to me. But Crafty Aranasi. I like this card already. It's fun when you triple in this early enough. It does do some fun damage to random things. Well, goes from being a 1/8 to a 3/10. So guess what? I liked this card before. Guess what? I like it more now. And folks, they destroyed False Implicator. The nerf bat that crushed this thing was massive. It was like a moon falling out of orbit onto the poor Implicator. I don't know why he deserved this. He goes from a 1/2 to a 1/1 with the same exact ability. Misfit Dragonling got a change too. Went from being a 1/2 to a 2/1 with the same ability of start of combat, gain stats equal to your tavern tier. So I'm guessing that most people were just not taking Misfit Dragonling as much. Now they certainly will. It's a 3/2 on turn 1. At the very least, it's good. And if you're tiering after that, it's going to keep getting a little better. I think we'll see a little more play with the new stat line, no doubt. Blazing Skyfin got a buff after all this time. And I have said this card does not feel good anymore. I still think it doesn't feel great, but the base stats are a little better. Goes from a 1/3 to a 2/4. I'm pretty content with these changes. I mean, it needed something. I don't know if this is the something it needed, but here we go. Blazing Skyfin. Electric Synthesizer. Same battle cry, same tribe. It's still a dragon. Goes from being a tier 4 4/3 to a tier 3 3/3. Still basically just a card I'm cycling through. The stats are fine with it. Stays on my board. It might be for a turn. It's there for the battle cry. Draconic Death Scale. Used to be a tier 4 6/3, is now a tier 5 8/3. The stats are kind of irrelevant for me. I'm buying this for the spellcraft effect to trigger a friendly battle cry, but it is tier 5, so it's definitely nerfed just by the fact that there's less of them in the pool, which makes me sad. Kaligos. Kaligos, if I remember right, and I had a hard time remembering the changes to Kali because there haven't been many, and they're not really significant, and this is exactly the same thing. He goes from being a 2/10 to a 4/12 with the exact same ability of when you trigger a battle cry, give your dragons +1/+1. More in line with a tier 6 stat. I felt like 2/10 was always kind of subpar because when you tripled into it and you got a 2/10, never really felt good. If that was the last of your gold and you had nothing left to do for the turn, at least he's a 4/12, which still isn't great, but it's something. Kaligos, maybe more love now. Molten Rock goes from being a 3/1 to a 3/2. Everything else is the same about it. I mean, it's got a little more health, so it's not quite as much of a wet noodle, but we'll see. I mean, I don't have any problems with this card. I don't typically want to play it, but maybe as a 3/2, it'll stand out versus the other, minions in my shop that I just don't want. Party Elemental, same tier, same tribe, goes from a 3/2 to a 4/2. Just a hair more attack. Not a big difference, but maybe this makes people want to play it more. I like it when I get to cycle a lot, but when I'm cycling a lot, I also don't want this on my board very long. So I'm not sure if this one attack makes a difference to me, but it's a 4/2. Not horrible. Crackling. Everything the same about it, except it goes from being a 3/1 to a 4/1. 4/1's a much more respectable attack rate. It's going to do just enough damage to kill a lot of things in tier 1 and 2. And you're going to get 2 swings with it now, so that does feel a lot better. In the Wildfire Elemental, this poor card gets yo-yoed back and forth just constantly. Goes from a tier 4 8/4 to being a tier 3 6/3 with the same ability of after this attacks and kills a minion, deal excess damage to an adjacent minion. I mean, I like this card. I like cleaves. Anytime I can get access to cleaves earlier, it feels better. Unfortunately, so do my opponents. So I don't know if it's going to work out, but we'll see how the changes work. I mean, I still like Wildfire Elemental. We'll see. Recycling Wraith. Well, I guess there was just too many of these things. They were seeing a lot of play. It is a great card, so it doesn't surprise me. It's hopping up to take Wildfire's place. It goes from tier 3 4/2 to tier 4 5/4. Makes more sense. This is where it was before. I think it's a better fit. I think it was too easy to get, but we'll see if it makes any big difference and changes. It's still on 4, so it's still pretty easy to get. Landlubber, I'm guessing the stats just weren't quite cutting it. People just weren't buying it anymore, which feels weird. After the months we had, 2 months where Landlubber defined the game. Landlubber gets buffed from a 4/5 to a 5/7. Everything else exactly the same about it. Still a viable card, especially if you want to do that type of spell build. Still does its job great. It's unique to how it does it. Nobody else puts extra spells in the shop, so it is really cool for that. So maybe those extra stats make you think a little harder about going for the elemental build. Ziliax! All modules go from being 4/3s to 3/4s. To be honest, I kind of like that a little more. I like the durability in the early game more than the high attack. But with the Divine Shields and the Reborns and all that, it was kind of annoying. So that's probably why they nudged it down to a 3/4 from a 4/3. Not really a nerf. It's kind of a wash. It kind of goes both ways. So it depends if you like more attack or if you like more defense. Scrap Scraper got a pretty significant buff. I kind of like this. Goes from being a 6/5 Death Rattle, get a random magnetic, to 5/5 Battle Cry and Death Rattle, get a random magnetic mech. It's a pretty significant change. That battle cry at the beginning, now with all the ways we have to trigger battle cries, means mechs might actually have an out through some manner of playing battle cries. Shutterwalk, who gets stuck playing mechs, might not be crying the whole time. He finally gets to keep his hero power and get some value, especially if he triples it. So I think Scrap Scraper is going to make a nice return. It gives mechs a little bit of a resurgence, possibly. Utility Drone also getting a pretty good buff. Used to be 3/4 at the end of your turn, give your minions +1/+1 for each magnetization they have, to now being a 4/4, a little more attack. At the end of your turn, give your minions +2/+1 for each monetization they have. So a little more scaling, a little more ramping up that attack. I like this. Utility Drone, I always wanted to be playing mechs, and now they might be a little more viable with yet another nudge in the right direction. Augmented Laborer, this card is so problematic for a tier 5 for me. It just doesn't work typically, especially at the Avenge it's at. Goes from being a 1/6 to a 3/8, still Avenge 4, get a random Mecha Demon. It has the same problem, it's still Avenge 4. I know Avenge 3 is too good, but Avenge 4 feels like a non-starter. But with the 3/8 stat line, maybe it'll survive a little longer to get you that extra magnetic or two. I still don't think it's going to be worth it as much as I want it to be. Charging Tsarina. Used to be a 4/2 Divine Shield. Whenever you cast a Tavern spell, give your minions with Divine Shield +3 attack, to now a 5/3 Divine Shield. Whenever you cast a Tavern spell, give your Divine Shields +2 attack. It's not a huge difference. A little bit of a nerf to the attack overall, of course. It gets a hair more stats. If you like this build, it's still going to work. It's just not going to work quite as well. Just depends how early you find this and what your board looks like. Very Hungry Winterfinner. Old taunt, whenever this takes damage, give a minion in your hand +1/+1, to now new taunt, whenever this takes damage, give a minion in your hand +2/+1. A little more attack, a little more value. Stat line's the same overall. I think that's a better change. I don't love this card. Maybe now I'll think about holding on to a card. We'll see. Maybe, probably not, but maybe. Murgle Mark II getting a change. Used to be 2/4 Avenge 3, give your minions in your hand and board +1/+1 permanently, to now being a 2/4 Avenge 4, give minions in your hand and board +1/+1 permanently. That 4 is a big difference. That is going to make it where it's really kind of hard to get value out of that Avenge. I don't know. We'll see, but don't love that change for sure. If you liked Murgle Mark II, that's a big nerf. Into the Bream counter. Murlocs get another change. Used to be a 6/6 while this is in your hand and you play a Murloc, gain +2/+2, to now being a 5/5 while this is in your hand after you play a Murloc, gain +3/+2. So a little more attack for your Murlocs, a little less base stats barely for this. If you like this card, it's still just as viable. Got a little more attack on those. I think it's fine. I think this is a good card still. Magma Lock getting a bit of a change. This card was pretty powerful the first time it was around. It doesn't seem nearly as impactful now. Goes from being a tier 5 to a tier 4 with the same stats and abilities. Still an interesting card. Getting this earlier does make it more viable, so we'll see. I have high hopes for Magma Lock to hopefully make a return to something people want to actively play often. Primal Fin got hit with the nerf bat pretty bad. Primal Fin goes from a tier 4 to a tier 5, same stats, same abilities. Let's face it, we're not buying it for its stats, it's those abilities, and tier 5 means there's less of them, so definitely not as much fun to be playing Murlocs in that regard. If you get that Primal Fin, you are hanging onto that thing as hard as you can. Gladiator gets a bit of a buff, goes from a 1/1 to a 3/3 base stats, otherwise same abilities, so it's a little more durable. Feels a little better when you get it as an early triple, or if you just happen to be the only tier 3 in your shop and you're like, well, I gotta buy one, but god, that feels bad, because a 1/1 with Divine Shield with no spells is pretty bad. Now it's a 3/3 at least to start, so a little better for where it is. Deep Blue, we might see a return of the Deep Blue Crooner. Used to be a tier 4 2/2, is now a tier 3 4/4. So more stats, more of them. We might see a return of the Deep Blue build. Let's see. I'm excited. I liked the Deep Blue build when it was a thing. Let's see if we start hearing way too much crooning going on. Zesty Shaker gets a bit of a change. Goes from a tier 3 3/4 to a tier 4 6/6. So big stat bump. Less of them in the pool. I haven't seen many people using them as much. Seems like they're swapping places with it in the Deep Blue, because you usually wanted the Deep Blue and then the Zesty and not the other way around. So the ordering feels right. Let's just see if the deep blue gets too overpowering, so they have to put it back up at 4. Defiant Shipwright. Same abilities, same tier, all that good stuff. Goes from a 2-4 to a 2-5. Still a decent tier 2 card to pick up if you have any way to buff its attack. It gains health. This is still a good card. If you were going to use it before, it still is now. I'm Captain Hooktail. What can I say about this card? Used to be a 1-5. Whenever you cast a tavern spell, give your other minions +1 attack. To now being a 2-5, whenever you cast a tavern spell, give your minions +1 attack. That is the difference there is, yes, it has one more base attack, but it also buffs itself now, which was kind of a problem before. It's a 1-5 that never buffed itself. It never felt good. You know, you're not casting a ton of tavern spells typically early, so you weren't really getting much use out of this unless you're going for like a lover build. Maybe now we'll see more play of this. I haven't seen much of this, and I've only used it very little. So it'll be interesting to see if we see more of it now. Record Smuggler getting a bit of a nerf. Goes from being a 5-4 at your start of your turn, gain 1 gold, repeat for each other pirate, a lot of gold, to a 6-6 at the start of your turn, gain +2 gold. If you control at least 3 other pirates, gain 2 more. This means it's actually more viable for non-pirates now in the current form than it was before, because you weren't playing pirates, you get 1 gold. Well, now you're getting 2 gold for just having this sit on your board. Not bad. And if you have 3 other pirates, you gain 2 extra gold. Something I wouldn't mind ending my turn off if I was cycling something else with and it was just in my hand and not playing pirates now as opposed to wanting it on my pirate board. But we'll see. Maybe after I play a couple games, I'll still want to use it. I love pirates, so it's possible. Gem Smuggler got hit with a bit of a nerf, but it was kind of strong. Went from a tier 5 4-3 Battlecry, play 2 blood gems on all your other minions, to tier 4 3-4 Battlecry, play a blood gem on all your other minions. So 1 less blood gems, a little less stats, a different tier. There's more of them, so if you like them, at least you get more of them. Harmless Bonehead. He's not as harmless as he once was. Goes from being a 0-2 to a 1-1. Otherwise, exactly the same. Hateful Hag. 4-2 to a 6-2. Otherwise, the exact same thing. Same tier. Everything else the same. Hungering Abomination. Now, this is a card I felt needed a little bit of a bump. I hope this is enough for it. Goes from being a 3-4 to a 6-7. Same tier. The issue with this card, it was so fragile at 3-4 that, you know, if you got it, you tripled into it early and it would get hit by anything before your other stuff died. It just never scaled. Maybe as a 6-7, it has a little more survivability to give it time. Not a great card in the current meta. Let's see if this shapes it into a better position. Moros, Steward of Death. A little bit of a nerf. 5-2 Reborn Death Rattle, give your undead +2/+5 is now a 4-2 Reborn Death Rattle, give your undead +2/+4. So a little less attack on its base form, gives a little less health as its Death Rattle. Still a very good card. I think it's still going to be very viable, but we'll have to wait and play some games with it, see how it is. But I don't think that's enough of a change to warrant people ignoring it. Still very good. Fire Dancer, basically the same. Goes from being a 4-2 to a 5-2 stat line. Otherwise, everything else is the same. Winged Chimera got hit a bit with a nerf stick. Went from being a 3-6. Whenever this takes damage, give a friendly minion of each type +2/+1. To now being a 1-5. Whenever this takes damage, give a friendly minion of each type +1/+1 permanently 3 times per combat. So the most it's going to give your board is +1/+1 3 times, but it loses attack and it loses health. A lot of attack. I don't know how excited I feel about this. We'll see. We'll have to get some games in and see with it, but in its last form, it was seeing a lot of play and it was pretty popular, so get some games. And Scrolled Fungus changed a little, same base stats. Ability changed a bit though. Used to be, has +1/+2 for each tavern spell you've cast this game, wherever this is, to now being has +2/+2 for each tavern spell you've cast this game, wherever this is. It's just a little more attack, but it makes it a little more viable. Never been super excited to have to buy this because I can't find the minions I want, but because I've cast some tavern spells, is decent. Maybe this makes me want to keep this on my board a little bit more. Maybe this makes me look at spells a little bit more. Probably not much, but a little bit. Unforgiving Triet got a bit of a buff. Went from being a 2-12, whenever this takes damage, give your minions +1 attack permanently, to a 3-12, whenever this takes damage, give your minions +2 attack permanently. So, I mean, this isn't the kind of card you usually keep on your board, but you triple into it early. The rest of your board's not great. At least this is pumping up your attack, and now it's going to be giving you even more attack. Base attack went up a little bit on it. It's not a huge change, but it's pushing it in the right direction. Nala the Redeemer. Bit of a change here. All pretty good if you like Nala. Used to be a 5/7, and whenever you cast a tavern spell, give a friendly minion of each type +2/+1. Now, a 5/6, whenever you cast a tavern spell, give a friendly minion of each type +2/+2. So giving a better buff line. Stats, they lost a hair health. You're not buying this for the health. I think this is a good nudge. We don't want to give it too much of a change. We don't want to make it something silly like a 3/3 buff. You know, a 3/2 buff. Let's just move it to a 2/2, see how it does. I like Nala already, but it's hard to get good spell generation going right now sometimes. So it really depends where you are, what tribes you're in, and which cards you've managed to find if you want to do this. But I do like Nala, so hey, anything that makes her more viable. Greymage Champion. Wow, surprising. This got nerfed. What from being a 6/5 after you play an even tier card, give your other even tier cards +2/+2 to a 6/6 after you play an even tier card, give your even tier minions +1/+1. They reduced it by half the buff. Is anybody surprised? It still feels viable. It's not as insanely viable, but if you've got an all even tier board and you happen to find one of these in the shop, it's still good. It's just not as crazy good as it once was. Moon Eater's Champion used to be a 7/8 after you play an odd tier card, give your other odd tier minions +1/+1. Now a 5/5, lot less stats. After you play an odd tier card, give your odd tier cards +1/+1. So just straight up nerf. The 7/8 stat line did feel really good for a tier 5 card. That feels more like a tier 6 to me. And the buff being a 1/1, that's fine. I have no problem with that. So this feels like a better change for your opponent and a little shitty change for you when you triple into it early. Corrupted Cupcakes. Same ability of when you choose a demon and it consumes all minions in the tavern to gain their stats. Went from a cost of 3 to a cost of 4. Sometimes this could be 10 and I'd still want to buy this thing if I'm playing any demons in the shop's buffed enough. So it doesn't really matter. I'm still going to buy this spell. I'm still going to play it. I'm just not going to get as many. Them apples got nerfed. Here it is, folks. It's 4 months late, but them apples got a nerf. It goes from being give minions in the tavern +1/+3 to give minions in the tavern +1/+2. Still feels really good. Could have been a 1/1 buffed all minions in the tavern. It still would be fine. But especially at tier 1 for 1 gold. But +1/+2. I still want to buy this spell. Boon of Beetles got a change. Used to be tier 3 when you have space during combat, summon a 3/3 beetle, 3 left. To now being tier 4 when you have space during combat, summon a 3/3 beetle with taunt, 4 left. But wait a minute, guys, you've broken your convention here. Shouldn't it be a 4/4 beetle with 4 left? I mean, you're supposed to all be the same number the whole way through. Aren't we going to be confused now? It's a 3/3 beetle? Actually, this is just a straight up buff, of course. It went up a tier. Now they have taunt. I do like this change. I have no problem with this, especially where it's still 2 gold. Still a good spell. Suspicious Stimulant. The same effect. All the same fun things you can do with it. Used to be a tier 3 for 3 gold, is now a tier 4 for 4 gold. If you liked this spell, you're still buying it. Scavenge for parts. Maybe people will play this more. Used to be 4 gold, now it's 2 gold. Still getting at the end of your turn, get a random magnetic for 3 turns. Pretty awesome for 2 gold. I mean, I thought it was good at 4 gold, but it was kind of an awkward number. 2 gold feels a lot more manageable. Cloning Conch is back. But hold on a second. It's not the same. It used to be get a copy of a non-golden Murloc in your hand. It is now get a random Murloc and a copy of it. So, I mean, yes, if your hand was just 2 buff Bream counters, that was a big difference. But now you're getting 2 Murlocs and they're going to be a pair no matter what. So that's a pretty good for 4 gold. That's not bad. I mean, it feels that way. I want to play some games and try it, but it feels not bad. It's going to suck when you get a Swamp Striker, but the Primal Fin out of that's going to feel really good. We'll see. We'll give it a shot. Duos card changes. First, Passenger. Old 2/3. The first time your team passes each turn, gain +2/+2 to now being a 2/2. The first time your team passes each turn, gain +1/+2. If you like this card, it still feels just as viable. It's a little less, but just a little. Generous Geomancer used to be a 2/1, is now a 1/1. This is a tier 2 that gives you and your teammate a blood gem. That 1/1 stat line feels really bad. You're getting 2 blood gems from it, but that 1/1 stat for a tier 2 feels really bad. I don't know how I feel about this one. it's really gonna depend on what's in the shop with it, but got 1/1 stat line. I mean, I guess it's always a bumper minion now, just knock off divine shields with it, but this one I'm very conflicted on, folks. I'm trying to figure out if I'm reading this wrong, but it doesn't seem to really change in a meaningful way. Used to be the orchestra conductor was a 2/2 battle cry, give a minion +2/+2 for your team's future orchestra conductors. It is now a 4/2, so more attack. Battle cry, give your minions +2/+1, upgraded for each orchestra conductor your team has played this game. So it sounds like it's exactly the same effect-wise, except it gives 1 less health, which means you're just going to see them in every game you play in duos. So it's been nerfed, right? Am I reading this wrong? Or is this a wet noodle nerf? Does this really feel like it does nothing? It makes a difference. It's 1 less health. I still want to meme the hell out of this and have Rylax, Reborn, just bouncing around with these all over the place, golden, just for random funsies. Still want to do it. Nothing changes. You tell me, am I wrong? Magnamoose, no text change. Now only summons up to 1 copy of each of your teammates' minions. I was not confused by the original text. I am now confused by the new text. So please translate for me what? Now only summons up to 1 copy of each of your teammate minions. Does that mean I get a whole copy of his board? I don't know. This is just making my brain hurt now. I don't know. Maybe I'm simple-minded here, but it seemed pretty cut and dry before. And now I'm looking at it and it's like, huh? I'm just going to move on. Puddle Prancer used to be a 3/3 after you pass this gain +3/+3 is now a 4/4 after this is passed gain +4/+4. See, there's that convention again. The 4/4s and the 4/4s, but it's tier 3. They broke it. It should be a tier 4, not a tier 3. Come on, guys. Come on. You gotta be consistent with your weird rules. Minari Messenger used to be a 7/4 battle cry. Minions in your team's tavern have +2/+1. Is now a 8/5. Minions in your team's tavern have +1/+1 this game. I still like this card. I liked it before. Yeah, it gives 1 less attack. I'm still going to cycle this as much as possible. Bit of a nerf here. Give your minions +3 attack. Upgrades by +3 attack after this is passed to now being give your minions +2 attack. Upgrades by +2 attack after this is passed. Pretty viable still, especially if your teammate's playing Divine Shield minions. Pass this thing around. Let them get a bunch of attack. Not as good, but still good. And hey, real quick, if you're enjoying this, hit the subscribe button. I need to hit 5,000 subscribers for Blizzard to consider me actually a content creator. We're getting there, but please help me out. Hit that button, please. Come watch a couple videos, have fun, and let's hope Blizzard can consider me a content creator one day. I've made a couple videos for them, as you can see. All right, we have some bug fixes and game improvements, and there's a few of them. So right off the bat, we have recruitment program will now be unable to triple in your hand before the recruit is passed to your teammate. I've seen this bug a couple times. It caused me a lot of confusion in the moment it happened. Good fix. Here's a bug I never saw, and I'm happy about it. Fixed a bug where if Millhouse Manastorm beat both of your opponents, his tavern refresh cost of 2 gold would also affect your teammate. We won the fight. We definitely lost the game. That is a good fix. Very good fix. I've seen this one a number of times. Fixed a bug where Plunder Pal didn't grant your teammates gold. Good fix, because that needed to be, that made it useless. Fixed a bug where using suspicious stimulant on a minion caused errors with Jandis Barov's hero power. I didn't run into this one, luckily. And I did see this one a couple times, but fixed a bug where Felbor would consume a minion in the tavern before the tavern spells would take effect. That drove me nuts a number of times. Fixed a bug where magnetized enchantments on a magnetic minion wouldn't carry over if the minions was tripled. That was annoying. Oh, and hallelujah, here is an improvement to end all improvements. If you were ever playing APM, if you ever played anything that discovered this thing, you hated it, but sped up Mirror Monster's visual effect. Thank you. It felt like it took a half an hour, and I'd always just discover one, and then another one, and be like, no, and then another. It's like, okay, we get a gold one. It's like, no, there's so many triggers. It was painful. It just made me never want to discover this card because of how long it took if I was anywhere near the end of my turn. And this is a good fix. That's it, folks. That's everything. I'm out of here. There's a lot to edit with this. This is just a massive balance patch. There is a lot of changes. The meta is going to be shook up pretty well by this. They're all little changes for the most part. A couple big exceptions, a couple things that feel like they're not really changes, just change for the sake of change. But let's wait and see. Sometimes nudges in another place affect things you don't expect, and that's their intention. And sometimes it's just a happy coincidence. Let's hopefully this susses some things out and it makes the game feel a little better. Although admittedly, I am enjoying it quite a bit right now. So I'm really happy that I was apparently wrong with duos. People seem to love duos. Hey, that's great. I'd rather me be like, I don't want to play that, and everyone be like, we love that. Because hey, at least you're having fun with it. As opposed to everyone being salty like I was, where I'm like, I don't want to play with random people. I'm glad I was wrong with that. It seems like it's a big hit with people. So that's awesome. Hey, I hope you learned a few things. I hope you had fun. I hope to see you again. I'll catch you next time. Have a good one. Later.